You lost me at 2.64 seconds. That's every prospect everywhere when you're trying to engage them by phone. You lost me at 0.66 seconds if you're trying to engage them electronically. So let me explain this, because this is one of the pieces of our learning that either didn't exist or it wasn't taught at the level it needed to be for us to function properly when we are trying to engage somebody in a conversation that is of our making, right? And that's what prospecting is, right? We're trying to engage somebody or get them to engage with us in a conversation that's meeting our KPIs or that's tied to our agenda. And that's where this all starts to go awry, because why 2.64 seconds? That's when we identify ourselves as a call that the person never would have picked up the phone to take, right? If you ask anyone, especially executives, right? We're supposed to start at the executive level. You ask anyone, when do you make time during your day for a prospecting call? The answer is always the same. I don't. Thanks for asking. I don't. And so what have we learned as salespeople? We've learned, if you're trying to get to the executive level especially, but this translates for everyone, you call when the assistant isn't there. We get around the gatekeeper by avoiding the gatekeeper, and we learn, and everyone, this has been taught for decades, right? You call at 7:15 at night. You call at 6:30 in the morning, and you navigate the main number, and you get the voicemail, all those things we learned. But the moment of truth is when that person picks up the phone. And when they pick up the phone, right, and they do their bit, right, they identify themselves or not, they say hello, or they say, this is John Smith, then it's our turn to talk, right? They're basically saying, it's me. And then we go. And what we didn't learn, and one of the key things we needed to learn, is that moment of inflection, that moment when we transition from you've picked up to recognition of who's on the call, sets the tone for how that call is going to be handled. And so what have we learned? What were we taught? We were taught that you start the call by identifying yourself, right? Or we've learned that's how I start the call. They say, this is Jen Smith, and we say, this is Eric Shaver calling from insert company name. So what do they now know? They now know, I don't know who you are, right? If it's truly prospecting, right? You're engaging somebody who doesn't know you. Otherwise, it would be a different form, right? It would be more, share of wallet selling and engaging someone that knows you. So I know you're someone that I don't know, okay? And we'll get to, if you've sent them emails and things prior to that maybe they recognize your name, but even then it's extremely unlikely. And they hear the combination of name I don't recognize coupled with the name of a company. Whether they recognize the company or not is immaterial, right? There's a pattern that they're used to. There's a pattern they recognize there, and that's what a sales call starts off, how sales calls start off typically. It starts off with, this is me calling from somewhere, right? And why do we do this? If you think about it logically, it makes no sense. We are actually identifying ourselves as the very call we know they don't take. How do we know this? This is the very call that we don't take. We don't like getting solicitations. We don't like people calling our mobile phones or our desk phones and trying to sell us something. It's always an interruption. It is never viewed as a positive. Even if if you put yourself out there and you've asked for something, right? You've filled out a form and wanted to hear from a vendor, that's different. That's not a prospecting call, right? That's actually fulfillment. This is something where we're triggering an immediate pattern, right? So we're giving them a predictable pattern that has a negative association. And what we're doing is we're triggering a conditioned negative response without them even having to think. And that's how quickly those patterns are recognized. So your call, if you're prospecting, I timed it. Your call, 2.6 seconds, is about how long it takes at a normal cadence to identify yourself and the company that you represent. What you say after that can only make it worse usually, which is, is this a good time to speak? Or this will only take a moment? Or did I catch you at a good time? I mean, that's just the icing on the cake that validates you're absolutely a person I don't want to speak with. You're not on my calendar. We don't have a meeting, right? I don't take calls. You're not someone I know. And so the reason this is so critical is what follows after that isn't heard. That's the big problem. What follows after that is simply not heard. They give themselves permission to check out, right? Some people physically remove the phone from their ear, but at that point, they immediately go to, how do I end this as quickly as possible, because I didn't ask for it, I don't want it. If I want something, I'll go search for it on the internet, and then I'll go buy it, or I'll get my people to do so. So this is the biggest issue with prospecting, is that we don't get past that first transition, right? And that's what this is a transition, right? And it's, it's a transition in states, right? Their current state, right, is I'm paying attention to a phone call I've received, but I'm not paying attention to the person calling me yet until I have a reason to pay attention. And more importantly, I'm not expressing any interest because I need a reason for that too. Right? If I know you, then I probably have a sense of why you're calling, or I know why I'd want to listen to you because we have some form of relationship. If I don't know you, I have no reason to attend. I have no reason to be interested until you give me one. But are you the type of call that I take that I normally will pay attention to, or the type of call that I never pay attention to and just try to get rid of? If you're calling at the executive level, if you're calling from Bain, McKinsey, BlackRock, you're calling from, an organic asset or resource that is executive oriented in its very nature, well, they express interest in what comes out of those sources on a daily basis. So maybe there's something here worth listening to. But if you identify yourselves as something that they normally delegate or don't listen to, which is a typical vendor that they don't own personally and don't recognize that immediately, then they're immediately going to check out. And that's what happens to all of us. So the most important thing that you have to do is get your first transition, not have the best pitch in the world. Because if you don't get past that first transition to I'm listening to you, then it doesn't matter what you say after that, right? Because it's either not heard or it's discounted. Matters get worse when it comes to the written word via electronic communication. Because I'm now looking at my inbox, something in my inbox. I'm going to very quickly look at sender, don't recognize the sender, subject line, what's the subject? If the subject is an obvious solicitation, I'm done, right? Delete, I won't even open it. If it's an ambiguous subject line, maybe there's something in there that I don't recognize, I need to dig further, I'll open it, and the 0.66 seconds is the identification visually within whatever I'm given. Right? Does it look immediately like it's a cut and paste or a campaign? Which means, does it have all kinds of does it have graphics in it? Does it have links in it? Does it have a format that looks like a cut and paste of a template or a data sheet type syntax? Or is it short, tight, clean, looks like it was written for me by someone that was very specific? And then I'm going to very quickly look at what's the salutation. Is the salutation, hi, Eric, done, it's gone. Right? I don't recognize you, hi, that's a salesperson trying to build rapport or engage me in a friendly way. Well, I don't need new friends. Then I'll look at the first sentence, and the first sentence tells you everything. Right? The first sentence is, are you starting with, you're talking about your company? Are you starting with a pitch? Is it I just sent you an email, or I called and you didn't get back to me? It's like, done. We are done. And that's how quickly this happens. And it usually is at a glance. And if it goes below the scroll, there's all kinds of things that are triggers. And you can see that in this chapter, the things that will tend to be triggers. But that's why the most important thing is that you master your first transition so you can get to your second transition. The first transition is, I'm paying attention to what you're saying. I'm paying attention to you, right? Because you're saying things that are getting my attention. But we have to very quickly transition to what you're saying is interesting to me. There's enough interest in what you're saying. And just to be initial interest, doesn't have to be much. There's enough interest in what you're saying for me to keep listening or consider what you're asking me for. And your third transition is, you're trying to get me to make a commitment to you. Not now, hopefully, right? You're not trying to get me to commit time now on an interruption, because that's going to be a very fragile, short moment. You're trying to get me to commit some time on my calendar so we can have a meaningful conversation. Well, that's 2-3 transitions you have to go through, from, to attend, to interest, to considering commitment, in a very fragile piece of time, about 15 seconds. And if you start it wrong, usually the rest of it goes unheard. So this is where we have to start. And this is what you do instead of saying your name and your company and blah, blah, blah. You don't say here.